If you don't know what's in this cup, you're dumb. I don't know what to tell you. Did you know that Bring Me the Horizon came out with a song called Kool-Aid? You know what that means, right? Bought a cheap snare on Amazon, ripped all the hardware and the wrap off of it, learned wood carving and ink transferring to make a drum badge, used a Dremel to route out brick shapes into the wood and f***ed up the shell's structural integrity. That was dumb on my part. Caulked the routed grooves, cut a big ass hole in the side of the drum, texturize, paint, and weather the drum to look like a brick wall, paint the lug gaskets blue and then change my mind and paint them red, glue a Kool-Aid Man Funko Pop into the big ass hole I made prior to make it look like he's oh-yang the side of the drum. No big deal. For starters, the snare that I got is a Griffin snare off of Amazon. I think it was about like $45, $46. I specifically bought it because I wanted the red hoops. I thought I wanted the red lugs, but I ended up changing my mind. All right, let's give the snare a listen. I didn't do any tuning to it, any muffling. This is straight out of the box, the stock sound as it comes. Let's see how it sounds. Alright, so to no surprise to anyone, it sounds terrible. As with any drum set or snare drum that comes stock, usually most drum companies just get everything on there and ship it out. There's very few drum companies that actually tune it up for you. I think only like DW and maybe a couple others do that. Otherwise, yeah, this is just standard, like, not so great straight out of the box snare sound. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tune it up with all of the same heads and everything still on it, just to see if I can get it to sound good as is. I feel like I got it tuned up pretty nice. I put a couple moon gels on it. Again, this is all just the stock stuff. I'm trying to show that even if you buy a snare drum for like pretty cheap, that if you just tune it up right, sometimes you can get it to sound pretty decent. And then from there, you replace heads, you replace stair strainers, you replace throw-offs, like whatever else. At the end of the day, you can always take whatever drum shell and turn it into something magnificent, in my opinion. Now that's sounding a lot better to me already, but yeah, sometimes all you need to do is just like give it a nice little tune up, and usually you can end up getting like a pretty decent sounding snare. Again, like I say, it's not the best sounding snare. I'm just trying to prove that sometimes you can buy like a $56 snare or whatever it costs by the time I'm editing or posting this, and turn it into something good. From there, I ripped the drum apart, checked for imperfections, and guess what? There were a few that are going to come back to haunt me later. Foreshadowing. For anybody wondering, it's super easy to take drum wraps off. You just simply take a heat gun to it and then like a putty knife, and then depending how much glue or double-sided tape they used, which is what I prefer everybody uses because it's so much easier to get them off.
Would you look at that?
Unfortunately, companies like PDP and DW, they will glue the entire fucking wrap all the way around, in which case trying to get the wrap off of those bad boys is a pain in the entire ass. Next, what I did here is I wanted to experiment with a ink transferring technique where you can take a printed picture and transfer the photo onto a piece of wood using polyacrylic. Basically, all you have to do is you just put on a thin layer of polyacrylic onto the wood, take any image that you printed out, put it onto the wood, let it sit for, I think it recommended like an hour to 2 hours, give or take. And then from there, the design should transfer over right to the wood. Basically, once the paper is dried, then you just go back with a toothbrush to take the paper off. I think I'm going to experiment with different options later on, just because I realized that sometimes the ink would kind of smear or start to lift up. So I want to try and maybe come up with a better way to go about this. or maybe I'm just dumb and I don't know how to do things. This didn't exactly give me the intended look that I wanted for this drum badge anyway, so later on I made a stencil and I painted back over it, but I was trying to experiment for an art project that I want to do later on that maybe I will make a video for someday. Next up, I just drilled all the holes to the size that I need for the new lugs that I'm going to use, along with drilling new holes, because the original lugs was just a double-sided lug that went right in the center, and I wanted 2 lugs, top and bottom, single-sided. I also got these off-brand pearl throw-off and butt plates that are usually meant for floating snares, and not going to lie, kind of regret the throw-off. The throw-off always shuts off on me in the middle of drumming. So, great. That's wonderful. I fucking love it. As I'm doing my unboxing, you can see my cat in the background. His name is Atticus. Please tell him you love him in the comments. Tell him you love him in the comments. To plug up the existing holes that were for the original throw-off and butt plate, I put dowel rods in them, glued them in, and then used a coping saw to cut off the excess. The easiest way I've known for drilling new holes for lugs and throw-off butt plate and all the other stuff is usually those things come with a gasket, and I usually just use the gasket to kind of mark the holes. And then once you've marked your holes with the gaskets, you just take the gasket off and drill your holes. So from here, for the marking out the bricks and all the grout pieces in between, I used a couple different rulers. One I recently discovered is a architecture ruler, which has like 6 different measuring options on it. So that's cool. And then the other ruler, this blue one right here, is bendy. And I used to not own this until my fiance let me borrow it for this project. Now it's mine. You're not getting it back, Kylie. I mean, you can have it back if you need it. Anyway, once I had all the lines and everything drawn up, then I just went right into routing with the Dremel, which, by the way, in hindsight, was a terrible mistake. Dremels are meant to do smaller projects. They're not meant to do this. So in hindsight, I probably should have used an actual router or a routing table. While doing this, I took a little snack break to eat the second half of my Subway footlong, and look at that, my cat is enjoying my drum. He likes it. Oh, danger. So as I'm routing this out, I realized that in the middle of the snare, an imperfection that I noticed earlier but didn't really do anything about because I thought that it was minor. It was not minor. It was literally the thing that was going to destroy this entire drum at one point. I thought that I wasn't going to be able to do this video because this imperfection that I didn't go back and fix sooner almost destroyed the entire drum. I was already weakening the structural integrity of this entire drum, and then the fact that this hole going right down the middle of the shell, yeah, it breaks later, and I had to do things to fix that. I didn't film me fixing it because at that point I was so done. But we'll talk about how I fixed it later. I ended up not filming a lot of the routing because it took me an entire weekend. This was not a short and
Synchro, visible, surface leather, squeet, spectacle, consequences, widow. Fuck.
I'm dumb. I'm so dumb. Stupid. This was not a short and easy project. Next after that, I put a bunch of caulk in between all the routed grooves because I wanted it to kind of look like a cement brick wall, and I used Alex. No, really, it's a caulk named Alex for some reason. Basically, I bought this one because it's a caulk that you can paint on. You have to be careful with that. I learned that because I was gonna just buy any caulk. And then my dad let me know that you have to buy a specific caulk that you can paint on. So that was a good insight, because I would have just used any caulk, and then, you know, the paint probably would have peeled up, and then I would have been not so happy. I think what's funny is watching me caulk this drum is that I tried to be so nice with it at first. I was caulking each of the individual lines, and I was taking my time with it and shaping it, and then it was taking a little too long, so I got fed up, and I just started like squeezing caulk onto the surface of this drum like a madman. and then smoothing it out with the putty knife. One could say I went absolutely sicko mode on the caulk.
What did he say?
After I caulked it out and let it dry for a few days, yes, a few days, I repeat, this was not a weekend project. This took me a month. This took me a whole month, my dude. I thought that this was going to be a real quick, simple, easy drum build. No! It was not. Anyway, I let the caulk dry for a couple days just to be safe. Then I went in with my coping saw and cut out some of the bricks on the side of the drum. For this, I was very careful with which bricks I was cutting out. I didn't cut out too far so that way the lugs actually had somewhere to hold on to, but I needed to cut enough to allow the Kool-Aid man to be coming through. I also had to be careful with which ones I was cutting out because there were certain bricks I had to cut off, some I had to leave on, and some I had to cut in half to allow for the Kool-Aid man to be glued to. After that, I took all the bricks that I cut off and just kind of shaved them down with a Drumbal because I didn't want them looking too, ugly. I just wanted him to have that uniform brick look. Probably the most exciting part is when I was shaving these down, at one point, something happened with the Dremel, and the sanding paper on it flew off. I still haven't found it. I have no idea where that thing went off to. So anyway, put a new sanding bit back on and then finish the job. At this point, I'm not gluing the Kool-Aid man in quite yet. I wanted to glue him in after all the painting process because I didn't want to have to worry about covering him up or him potentially getting painted at all. I just kind of use him as reference for right now because of all those pieces I'm actually going to glue back on in different places to make it look like the bricks have broken away. Once all the bricks were glued on and I let them sit and dry for like a day just to be safe, I then used a couple different tapes just to make sure in the painting process that the inside of the drum would stay safe from any of the paint. Next after that, I set up a little paint tent and I put a clear coat on the Kool-Aid drum badge. And then from there, I proceeded to put a stone texturing spray paint on the drum because obviously I couldn't just let it be like a smooth surface. Bricks aren't smooth unless you make them smooth, and even then they're not really smooth. After that, I attempted to use some Q-tips to clean up the holes. Between the caulk and the paint, it was a mess in those holes. After that, to try and do a little bit more texturing, I went over certain bricks, put a little bit of glue stick on them, and took cotton balls. Did that over a few different bricks just to give them an extra little, kind of concrete texture to them. After that, I went over the entire drum with a Craftsmart gray acrylic paint. This one right here. I ran out in the middle of it, so I had to borrow my fiance's. She's also not getting this back. From there, to do all the weathering, I just watered down black acrylic paint. I went back and forth between paintbrush, sponge, and just a rag. Usually the method is that you want to put a watered down paint and then you want to wipe it down right away, and that gives you like a good weathered look to it. There's a couple spots you can see I was trying to splatter the paint on to try and give a little bit more story to the concrete, because obviously concrete isn't exactly just perfect gray, and even weathered it's not perfect, so I kind of wanted to try and replicate those imperfections across the drum. Once I got it all painted up the way I wanted, I then went over it with a clear matte spray paint. That way I wouldn't have to deal with any scratches or flaking or whatever later on. After I peeled off all the protective layers that were on the snare, I then grabbed the Kool-Aid Man Funko Pop. I'm not gonna lie, this one hurt a little bit. I am kind of a collector, and the fact that I bought this Kool-Aid Man Funko Pop to immediately take out of the box and then permanently glue to a drum, that was not mentally easy to get past. And I'm sure there's collectors out there probably just screaming at me. But was it worth it? It was worth it? I think it was worth it. After that, I just went to assemble the drum and changed my mind on the drum heads a bunch of different times. This is where I kind of fell off and I stopped filming some stuff. Some of the bricks that I glued around the Kool-Aid Man started getting in the way of the drum heads. I had to kind of peel some off, repaint those areas, glue those bricks into other places. That was kind of a hassle in of itself. After that, I put the drum completely together. That's when I soon noticed that the hole that was in the drum that I pointed out earlier, the drum itself started cracking. It started breaking. So to go back in and fix that, I had to buy some reinforcement rings. Thank you, Drum Factory Direct. You've saved me in so many drum build projects. And then specifically in that area that it was cracking, I took a paint stirrer, cut off a little piece of the paint stirrer, drilled holes into the paint stirrer, glued it all together. Once I let everything sit and cure for a day, I put the drum back together, and hopefully it keeps itself together. So far, it's so good. I got through filming a drum cover and everything, and the only issue I ran into was the fucking snare throw off. Jesus Christ. That thing was so goddamn annoying that it would just constantly it was just, I would be in the middle of film. I kept having to readjust it. I kept having to touch it and do the thing. It was so, I'm calm. So once I got done with all of that hassle, there it was. The drum was finished. It was done, ready to go, ready to get beat on. Sorry. Ready to get played. I don't know if that's better. But anyway, final thoughts. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how the snare came out. It ended up looking better than I could have ever imagined. I forgot to mention earlier in the video, but the lugs are actually spare lugs from my drum set. My drum set is actually like a 7-piece with 2 bass drums, and I only use like 3 of the pieces. And so I use those extra drum components to go toward this drum. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. In hindsight, the ways that I think I would have gone about this whole project better is I would have used a thicker shell. Maybe I would have tried to do my own stave shell and just make it like a solid like 2 inches thick. That way I could route out into it and not have to worry about the structural integrity. But yeah, overall, I am really happy with how this drum came out, and a lot of other people seem to agree. It absolutely went off on Facebook. I actually had a couple people contact me for building them a custom snare, so fingers crossed that'll happen.
It did. I made another Mountain Dew snare. This one's for Alex Boss, and video for that will be coming out at some point.
Subscribe to stay tuned, maybe? Also, if you have any drum build ideas that you can shoot my way that maybe I could potentially look into doing in the future, I like building drums. They're a lot of fun. The videos are definitely different to film and edit. And just so you know, the same day that I'm releasing this video, I am also releasing a drum cover for Bring Me the Horizon song Kool-Aid. I felt it appropriate to play the song on this snare. To see the Kool-Aid drum cover, it's right here. It is right here, okay? This is the end of the video, and that's it. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of the drum. Alright, so Lois, Brian, Chris, Meg, would you like to take this video out for us?
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh yeah!